Steve. Okay. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Broad Street Blitz Take with your boy Cool Cat Connor, my guy Alex. What's up, Alex?
What's up?
We got our guy Steve in the building. What up, Steve?
Not too much.
And we got a special guest. We got our guy Michael. What up, Michael?
What up, Steve? It looks like he's in bed for this podcast. I like it.
Yeah,
I'm always am.
Relaxing. Okay.
Yeah, he always does that, right, Steve?
Yeah.
I didn't know we could do that. I would have been in my
So-
pajamas in bed as well, relaxing, taking a
Yeah.
nap.
I don't wear pajamas, so
I like it. Let's go. Let's go. I
Anyway,
feel like guys, I'm entering the Viper pit as a Rams reporter with all these Eagles fans up in here. So I'm ready.
Yeah,
for,
man. Salute to
I'm ready for the
everybody, man.
smashing.
Yep. It's what we do, Michael. It's what we do. So let's get down to it, ladies and gentlemen. Alex, start us off with your question to Michael.
My question is, what were your overall thoughts on how the Eagles' offense ejected the Rams' defense?
Well, my thoughts on that. I mean, first of all, the Rams defense got asked out like Mike Tyson in that fight on Netflix with Jake Paul, right? I mean, there ain't nowhere you allow 255 rushing yards. I think the total ended up being alone by Saquon Barkley. That is the most the Rams have ever allowed in their history. And I believe Barkley surpassing LaShawn McCoy for the most single game rushing yards in Eagles history. Obviously 2 touchdowns, both long ones, 72 and 70 respectively. I can't just say it was a one-man show, even though I know that's what it seemed like for everybody, especially going over 300 all-purpose yards. But A.J. Brown feasted on that Rams secondary as well, 109 yards with a touchdown and 28 yards. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say, Alex. Those Eagles offense, they whipped them Rams like it was lemon meringue pie. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Steve?
okay. Here was my question. Okay, so I'm hearing this over Philadelphia sports media right now from the post-game show. What I was watching after the Eagles kicked the Rams' butt. To be honest, did you see any weaknesses with the Eagles team? Because I really don't, to be honest. But here's another question, okay? Why were the Rams so awful with the Eagles?
Okay, let me answer both those questions, Steve. That was 2-part questions, right? And one,
Yeah.
Yep.
and one
Yeah.
run rant, I suppose. First question. here were my takeaways watching the entire game. This was my first time watching the Eagles play live. And I was just having this conversation at NBC Live on one of our shows that who the question was, with the 49ers injury riddled, 6 losses, seemingly out of the playoff hunt, though I know that's not official in this crazy NFC West, but they were the team I think everyone expected was going to run ramshot through the NFC this year, maybe go back to the Super Bowl, try to get revenge on, their second loss to the Chiefs in the last 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. They might be out of the picture at this point, and it seems like the Detroit Lions have a really easy path to get to the Super Bowl. They have 1 loss. They're blowing out teams left and right. They want to get revenge on blowing that big lead in the NFC Championship game to the 49ers. And it just seems like there's no team in the NFC that's willing to go toe-to-toe with them right now. And this was before Sunday Night Football. That's what I want to make cleared for all you guys and for the Eagles fans listening. Whereas in the AFC, it looks like it could be the Ravens, it could be the Bills, it could be the Chiefs, it could be even the Steelers. There's a lot of teams, even the Texans kind of have an outside shot. A lot of teams competing, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams made the Super Bowl, where in the NFC it kind of looked like an easy path for the Lions. I said on that show, the one team I thought that could beat the Lions was the Eagles, but I needed to see them not only on Sunday Night Football against the Rams, but I needed to see this next stretch now of 3 to 4 games for the Eagles, because their schedule is going to get pretty interesting here after this victory against the Rams. Obviously, they're going to have Baltimore, who just beat the brakes off the Chargers last night on Monday Night Football, another game I was at live. The Panthers, who almost upset the Chiefs, looking like Bryce Young is finally kind of molding into that player we thought he would be. That could be a tough trip-up game for the Eagles. Then the Steelers, another team tied for the NFC North Division with Baltimore. And then obviously a division game against the Commanders, who are the only kind of outside threat for the Eagles of not winning that division, the NFC East. So that next stretch of 4 games, those 4 teams, the Ravens, the Panthers, Pittsburgh, the Commanders. I want to see how the Eagles come out of it. I want to see how they play against these potential playoff teams outside of Carolina. Because if the Eagles play like they did against the Rams, to me, they absolutely can upset and beat the Lions and get to the Super Bowl. But I want to see how they play against them. So I know this is a long-winded answer, Steve, but what I saw just from that Rams game alone was that this offense is elite. With Saquon Barkley now in the backfield, my opinion, he is the best running back in the NFL. It's like 1A, 1B with Derrick Henry 1B, Saquon 1A. To me, he was like a 12-1 shot at the MVP entering Sunday Night Football. Now I think he's in the top 5 and the only non-quarterback in the top 5. And you could make a case for him to be MVP. With A.J. Brown healthy, with Jalen Hurts rolling, with this new offensive coordinator, the offense of the Eagles is elite. They can go toe-to-toe with anybody right now in the NFL. Anybody, hands down. The weaknesses you asked about is the defense, and primarily in the secondary. What I saw from this game, remember, this was a close game at the half. I believe just a 3-point game at the half. Rams open up with a missed field goal. They had some chances to keep this game close instead of getting it away from them. If you don't, I was talking to the Rams defense after the game. Some of those players, like, why did you allow such big runs? Gainwell had one on the touchdown, Barkley the 70 and 72. And they said it was just missed. They blame themselves. They obviously they give Barkley credit, but for them it was missed gap assignments. So where a guy was supposed to blitz the B gap, which would have stopped Barkley and not let him get to that next level and get vertical and then bust one open for 70, which we know he can do, and he has the speed he can do. Instead of that play call, the linebacker rushed the A gap, thereby having no sets, no return, no safety net to tackle Barkley if he reached that secondary line. So they said they blamed themselves for missing those gap assignments, not necessarily missed tackles or allowing Barkley to go to run ramshot like we said. But the Rams offense moved the ball well against this Eagles secondary. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp alone combined for almost 200 yards receiving. Demarcus Robinson, who just piling on, got arrested for a DUI last night. Kyron Williams ran the ball well. If this was a closer game where the Rams were winning, he probably would have gone over 100 yards. So the weakness that I see on the Eagles is on their defense and primarily on the secondary, not the defensive line. The defensive line is probably what won this game for them. They sacked Matthew Stafford 5 times. They played well on third down, obviously giving up a couple fourth down conversions. When you sack Matthew Stafford, when you put pressure on him, that's a bad formula for the Rams. Those are games you're going to lose. When the offensive line can protect him, keep him upright, those are the games the Rams usually win. Despite all that, they still move the ball well. So to me, Eagles secondary, especially committing some penalties, is where I think the weakness is moving forward and what could stop them, if they eventually lose to the Lions or meet the Lions in the playoffs or even get to the Super Bowl and play one of those other teams I just mentioned in the Ravens or the Chiefs or the Bills, could hurt them. And then why was the Rams defense so bad? Why were they so bad? To piggyback off of what I just said, the defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles, we're looking at, and I know this is a huge blow because we were just talking about Brandon Graham getting hurt. I thought he was in the defensive backfield all night long. I thought there was nobody on the Rams offensive line at all that could stop Jalen Carter. Even double teaming him, they couldn't stop him from being in Matthew Stafford's lap. So to me, why the Rams struggled was because they could not protect Matthew Stafford. They could not stop that ferocious Eagles defensive line, and they were not able to get off the field or extend plays on third down. And that was kind of the difference because I thought their offense moved the ball well, and then obviously they couldn't stop Saquon Barkley. But this was a Rams defense entering the season that we thought was going to be weak, that we thought was maybe top 5 worst defenses in the league. They're extremely young. And I said this to Alex early on, some of his podcasts. Rams got 99 problems, and not having number 99 Aaron Donald on the team and the defensive line is one. They really, really miss him. And if he was on this defense, I think they'd be a little better. But that's the answer to your question, Steve. They got a young, inexperienced defense that can give up big plays. They gave up tons of them against the Eagles, and then the Eagles' defensive line on the other side was just absolutely spectacular, putting pressure on Matthew Stafford, sacking him 5 times, and that's the difference in the game.
Okay, my question to you, I got 2 questions for you, Michael.
Sure.
The first one is Jalen Hurts. What's your thoughts on the QB1 of the Philadelphia Eagles? Because as you know, here in Philly, we acknowledge me. Acknowledge him as a franchise quarterback over here. So, what's your thoughts on Jalen? And the second question is, it was packed full of Eagle fans at SoFi Stadium. So, what was your thoughts on Eagle fans packing SoFi Stadium and along with Jalen Hurts?
Sure. Let me get to the second part of the latter question first, simply because it's like chronological order for me. Walking into SoFi Stadium about an hour and a half before kickoff, I thought I was at an Eagles game. I thought I was in Philadelphia. There was 80% Eagles fans. Look, from the times that the Chargers have played the Eagles over the years, including back when they were playing at a soccer stadium in Carson, California, I knew Eagles fans travel well. I know they come out and support their team. And moreover, there's a lot of Philadelphia transplants here in Los Angeles. There's a lot of transplants overall. I'm an LA native, and whenever I meet people and they find out I'm an LA native, they're actually like shocked, like I'm a dodo bird, I'm extinct. Most people in LA are transplants from other major cities or even small cities across the country. They come out here for the weather. They come out here to live the Hollywood dream, whatever that may be. And I know you guys know these transplants because I saw them in the stadium. Kevin Hart, Bradley Cooper, Rob McElhaney. I can go on and on. There were tons of guys who now live and women who now live here in Los Angeles, but all originated from LA, huge Eagle fans. They were all here in attendance to watch this Eagles-Rams game. So they travel well. But once the stadium was filled, once it was packed and the game kicked off, and I tried to count the green and blue at SoFi Stadium, which seats around 70,000, on a really good day. Maybe like 65 to 70, depending on the turnout. It was about 50-50, I think, which is still for a home game for the Rams, not great to have 50% of your crowd be the opposing team. But walking in, I can tell you, it felt like it was 80% Eagles fans, 20% Rams fans. And like I said, there's a lot of transplants here. Eagles fan base is diehard. I respect that about them. It's more diehard than the Rams because this is a team that just moved over from St. Louis, still in the last decade. And that's a big part of it. Obviously, they won a Super Bowl, so that puts inroads into this kind of grassroots movement of fans. But I think teams like Eagles, Packers, Bills, these fan bases travel really well and they show up for their team wherever they're at. And I saw that firsthand at the stadium. And then the second part of your question, which was the former question, which was about Jalen Hurts. It's funny that you mentioned that because I've been having these conversations about the USC Trojans, which is my alma mater. And there's a lot of Trojan fans and a fellow alumni like myself that want to see Lincoln Riley get fired so early in year 3 of his 10-year, $110 million contract. And so I kind of look, I never thought Lincoln Riley was a coach to the level of Urban Meyer, Mark Saban, Dabo Swinney level, or Kirby Smart, but I thought he was a good offensive coordinator. Obviously, he was Jalen Hurts' head coach at Oklahoma, and that's why I'm bringing this up. Mm-hmm. But he didn't have a dual threat scramble quarterback this season with Miller Moss at USC. And I think not having a Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, Spencer Rattler type quarterback has hurt the USC offense because they're simply one-dimensional. And if you don't have a top offensive line to protect a non-dual threat running quarterback, then you're going to be in trouble. And I think that is the biggest part of USC's problems this year than necessarily the head coach. And so to that point, when you have a dual threat quarterback like Jalen Hurts, like I just watched him last night, Lamar Jackson, who's probably the GOAT of being a dual threat quarterback, it is absolutely a lethal combination. And when this game potentially could have been close, when the Rams defense could have got the Eagles off the field on third down, gotten the ball back, tied the game or taken the lead at various points in this game, what I saw was Jalen Hurts finish them like polyurethane. He had 39 yards rushing. One was an 11-yard run on like 3rd and 8 that got a first down, kept the drive moving, and ultimately the Eagles ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. So what Jalen Hurts is able to do with his legs when he runs, and I think in this game he had like 12 carries, 12 attempts. That's lethal. I know he only had 179 yards and 1 touchdown. Like I said, 80% of them were to A.J. Brown, and this was definitely a Saquon Barkley game if I've ever seen one. Compared to what Matthew Stafford was able to do, but Matthew Stafford is not a dual threat mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts. So having him in the way this league has advanced, in the way you see the top quarterbacks in this league are Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. If you have a guy like Jalen Hurts that can do the same things that those guys do, you will have a shot in every single game. I would actually like to see him run more, because I think that can actually elevate the Eagles offense even more if you have to worry about not just one guy in Saquon Barkley, but arguably 3 guys in Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and Gainwell who can all gash you. It's just so much for defenses to have to stop. So I think it's a luxury that the Eagles have that. I think that it's good to have a dual threat guy like that. I would like to see him be a little bit more accurate, I guess, with his passing, maybe throw the ball around to a little bit more receivers. Like you see kind of Matthew Stafford Dukes. It really seemed like A.J. Brown was option A, and then his backup option was Saquon Barkley on the little screens and stuff. And then I really didn't see many other guys get involved in this game. So if there's any knock against Jalen Hurts, I'd like to see him get the ball to more guys and target more guys throughout the game.
Yeah. So go ahead, Leader. You next, Leader.
What's going on, my man? I see you represent the Rams. The first thing I wanted to say that I was listening to things. Defense, the secondary is the weakness, and that is the reason why they are getting sacks and pressure. When they put Coop in slot, they shut down the number 1. He can. I mean, he's proved it. Quinion, nobody can throw on him. And if you look at the Rams, they had a rush, and they had the guy he had 119 yards. The one receiver y'all got, how often you say his name? The one guy.
Puka?
Puka Nakua.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, you see, he wasn't getting nothing on Cooper or Quinion. But when they put Isaiah Rodgers on him, they started getting breather room. Stafford's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, it is what it is. Good receiver combination. They just couldn't keep up. Philly's defense is very physical, and they're young, and they all around the field. They are something different right now. They needed time to catch up. They needed to get experience before they really got there. That was my worry coming into the season. Is this young defense going to be ready to produce? And they are ready to produce. You look at how Stafford has done. He's been to the Super Bowl. I mean, and you're talking about you want to see Hurts throw. I mean, just answering the question, but Hurts does throw to different receivers. I mean, it just depends on what type of game it is. Johnny Wilson has a touchdown, 6'7" receiver. Didn't think he was going to throw him nothing. Every once in a while, they give Dotson involved. Then you got Barkley. Then sometimes they give it to Gainwell. Some games they give it to him. Calcaterra get the ball. He really got nothing this game, but Calcaterra, you've seen him. So he knows what he has. It's just that the guys they have to win a Super Bowl, you got to have a 1-2-3. That's the best way to get a Super Bowl. 1-2-3. Hurts, Brown, and Barkley. This turns out they all are unstoppable. Hurts, Barkley and Brown, they self. You can't stop them. There's nothing you can do with them. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. The Ravens are going to be a great test. They got a good defense. We need this defense to pound with them. We need the defense. And as the GOAT, Lamar Jackson, I'm just saying, I'm 43. How y'all doing? No, he's not the GOAT. He's not the GOAT. The GOAT of rushing quarterbacks. Just rushing quarterbacks. Is going to be Vic. You had to see Vic play. Do you want to talk about the rules? Okay, I'll give you that if you want to accept the rules. Back then, Vic didn't have those rules. Vic was running through everybody. Everybody. He didn't stop. He didn't. That's what he did. Look at the stats.
Hold on.
Most of the time, he's rushing through you. He's running through you. And you look at the conference championship game he played against the Eagles. He's running through you. It's more than like the passing don't outweigh the rushing. Lamar Jackson recently, I mean, he's having a good season. But what I do want to say is that if no one has Barkley as the MVP of the league, they're sleepwalking.
Yeah. So my question is to Michael. Hold on, leader. My question is, Michael is my bad. My question to Michael is, do you think Saquon Barkley should be the league MVP? Like, what was your thoughts on Saquon Barkley? And then we'll go back to leader before we go back to Steve and Alex.
Yeah, lots to dissect there. I thought for a second you were going to say Randall Cunningham. I'm glad you went Vic instead. I did get to see Vic play in his prime. I agree that maybe as of right now, he's the better GOAT over Lamar Jackson. I think the dogfighting issue in the middle of his career, in the prime of his career, missing the time that he missed, the controversy around him, not being able to ever win a ring might affect him in the long scheme. If Lamar Jackson ends up winning another MVP, winning a Super Bowl, and it's a Tyler discussion.
You're talking about
dual threat quarterbacks, correct?
Vic
was definitely was
the quarterback. You're not talking about all around quarterback. You can't put rings in there.
No. I'm just talking about the GOAT rushing quarterbacks. Correct.
It's not even.
Vic was faster, but I don't know. I mean, Lamar's pretty fast too. And the other thing is they're trying to get Lamar not to run as much.
Hold on, leader.
But anyways, I'm glad you chose Vic because a lot of people like Cunningham because he was the original. He was the OG. And I did see Vic live, and I agree with you. When he hit a hole, when he had space, there's nobody I've seen like him. I just want to see, because Lamar in today's game is almost unstoppable, especially when he can hit his receivers, but he hasn't been able to do it in the postseason. He hasn't even gotten to a Super Bowl, and Vic did. So it'll be interesting to see once Lamar Jackson's finished playing where they weigh out. That would be what I would say. The jury is still open on that right now. And I think that if Vic hadn't missed time in his career, it might not even be a discussion or a debate, because he was taken off the field in his prime and he could have won some chips.
All right.
That's not gonna make him. We're talking about talent is running the football. When he runs the foot, no one can catch Michael Vick. No one. He used to win games just like that. He throw for 117 yards and have 150 yards rushing. 117 yards for the game against the. I'm just saying, don't look for rings, because what's rings gonna do for rushing?
Rings is going to make you the GOAT. Who's the GOAT of quarterbacks, period? It's Brady, right? And why is it Brady?
All time. Brady's the greatest because you're talking about, here we go, quarterbacks. There you go again.
Well, to me, I think the unarguable GOAT is Tom Brady, simply because of the rings. And if Pat Mahomes can catch him or get close, he may end up supplanting him. So to your point, like, yes, it has, in the discussion of a GOAT, how many, you can be as fast as you want, you can rack up as much rushing yards if you want, but if you don't win anything, then what did it matter?
Wait, leader, hold on. Let's listen. I didn't hear from Alex. Alex, you got another question?
My next question is, what are your thoughts on how the Eagles defense is going to look now without Brandon Graham? And do you think that they can be a huge factor anyway without him?
I know that's a great question. I know that Slay also was injured in that game and didn't return. I'm not sure what the case is for him. Graham obviously is now done for the year, and I thought Graham arguably was one of the best. I mean, only because Jalen Carter was double teamed almost every snap. But Brandon Graham was able to get to the quarterback and put pressure on Stafford more than anyone else I saw in that game for the Eagles. So again, as we're talking about, if the Eagles secondary is the one weakness that we can look to as far as the way that the Rams offense was able to move the ball, and he's right, Quinion was basically negating Cooper Kupp, but then to your point, okay, so you take away the other team's number one, so what did the Rams do? They just went to number two with Puka Nacua, and he racked up 109 yards and was moving the ball down the field. The number three, Demarcus Robinson, was able to get a touchdown. Late in the game, Tutu Atwell was able to get big fourth down conversions and stuff. So you need to be a complete unit. You can't just have one shutdown corner. You need to have multiple guys that can stop this other team. And obviously, if you can't get to the quarterback, it puts more pressure on your secondary. So more so, Alex, I want to see what the Brandon Graham injury does for this defense, especially at their ability to put pressure on the quarterback to rack up sacks. But in my opinion, as long as you have Jalen Carter, he's amazing. He's almost unstoppable. You have to double and triple team him. I think it's going to create opportunities for other guys to step in. In this case, it's probably like Nolan Smith Jr. might step into that role, and we'll see if he can get pressure on him. Nakobe Dean's another guy I think that can benefit from this injury. So there's a lot here. I think Darius Slay's going to end up being okay. And obviously it's going to help them because when he did go down in this game, the Rams offense kind of opened it up and picked on Isaiah Rodgers, as this other guy was just talking about. So if he's healthy, that bodes well for them. And obviously we talked about Cooper, when he comes in as the nickel back, that's helpful for this team too. But the offense is elite. Like I said, you have those big three. You need those big three. Like we said, in AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts. But what I want to say to that other gentleman's point, when the Rams went to the Super Bowl and played the Bengals, and Odell Beckham Jr. in the first half was on his way to becoming Super Bowl MVP, and then he goes down with an ACL injury, the opposing defense just simply locked in on Cooper Kupp. And suddenly the Rams offense was almost cooked like a Thanksgiving dinner. and they needed other guys to step up. Otherwise, they could have been in big trouble because they were looking like they were cruising to a big Super Bowl victory. And obviously, it ended up being a very close game that the Bengals could have won in that final drive, if not for 2 back-to-back plays by Aaron Donald on 3rd and 4th down. So to just have one guy like A.J. Brown, like you talked about, I don't think that's all you need in order to win the big game, to win the Super Bowl. Because if he goes down or something happens to him, suddenly your offense becomes a little more one-dimensional. You can put more pressure on Barkley, and you're going to need those other guys to step up. And if they don't get the ball during the season, if Jalen Hurts is not moving the ball around, getting everyone included in the game, especially early in the game, then you don't know what their confidence is or what Jalen Hurts' confidence to them is when the game is on the line in a big game like a playoff game or an elimination game or if they're fortunate enough, a Super Bowl. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
My bad. My apologies. My question to you before we get to Leader and Steve is the Rams, where do they go from here after this loss? I know they got a path to get to the playoffs. Like where does the Ram go from here? And my other question is, because I got two. The second one is, do you believe the Philadelphia Eagles is a Super Bowl contender? Like, do you believe the Philadelphia Eagles are a Super Bowl contender? So those are my two questions for you. And then we'll pass it to Leader and Steve.
Yeah, Leader. Sorry about that. I kept calling him Jim. I didn't know your name. I didn't see you in the beginning when they were doing the introductions. Leader. So the two-part question there. First question: where do the Rams go from here? Look, the Rams were not expected to be a playoff team this year with the schedule, with Aaron Donald retiring. When you looked at the schedule in its entirety before the year, you would look at that Miami loss on Monday Night Football a couple weeks ago and the Philly game on Sunday Night Football as L's before the season. And they ended up being that way. So I'm not surprised by those results. And if I was to predict the schedule, which I did do before the season began, I had them losing both of those games. Whereas, situational circumstances were different. Like Miami was struggling and had a bad record going to that game, but that's because Tua was out with a concussion for most of the year, and they had injuries to the defense, and so suddenly that game, which should have been a Miami W before the season, was not what it was entering the game. Philly, look, I don't know why Philly struggles with the NFC South with their losses to Atlanta and Tampa Bay. They're befuddling to me. They're head scratching to me because I don't think the NFC South is that good. I don't think Atlanta or Tampa Bay is that good. I don't have them, as a threat to go deep into the playoffs, let alone make a Super Bowl. So again, I want to see now that it's later in the season. This is where the bills are paid, as they say. This is where the groceries get bought during these late games, as you're making a playoff push. I want to see what Philly can do against Baltimore, against Pittsburgh, against these playoff teams. This is the test. This is the measuring stick. So what I can say is their offense is Super Bowl caliber 100%. When you have Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and A.J. Brown, yes, you can get to the Super Bowl offensively. When you have Jalen Carter, and Q in the secondary, you have some talent on defense to get there, but it's the defense, I think, that needs to show me they are also elite and good enough to stop the teams like the Ravens, like the Steelers, like the Chiefs, like the Bills, etc. Washington Commanders coming up with their rookie from here in Southern California, Jaden Daniels. I want to see that defense perform against those teams when the stakes are high, when the lights are bright, to give you an answer if I think that they can be a Super Bowl contender. Right now, I think the offense is. I need to see it from the defense against these top-tier teams. For the Rams, even though you weren't projected to be a playoff team, even though you didn't have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua through the first 5-6 games of the season, they still hold their fate in their own hands. Demarcus Robinson, who's been amazing. He had that one-handed walk-off touchdown against Seattle a few weeks ago, their first road win of the year. He just got arrested for a DUI yesterday, Monday. So is he going to be able to play in that game against New Orleans coming up on Sunday? That's going to be a huge question. But if you can beat New Orleans, which I think they should, then you have fate in your own hands. Yeah, I see you pull up the schedule here. If you can beat New Orleans, which I think you should, or the standings here, go down to the NFC West. As you see, they're all jumbled up.
Yep.
2 teams 6-5, 2 teams 5-6. The Rams have wins over the Niners and Seahawks, lost to the Cardinals. If you beat the Cardinals in your penultimate game on December 29th, suddenly now you could potentially have the tiebreaker over all 3 teams. So that's what I mean when I say they control their own destiny. You beat New Orleans. I don't think they're going to beat Buffalo at home on the 8th. But then if you can beat San Francisco after that, the Jets are reeling. You can beat the Jets. If you beat Arizona and you beat Seattle, you beat those division opponents, then suddenly you're 10-7? And you probably win the division at 10-7. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, but this could be an NFC West division where the winner comes out of it like 8-9 this year, with a losing record even, or 9-8. I think it was the Seahawks finished with a losing record one year, 7-9 or whatever it was, won the division, hosted a playoff game and a very good Saints team, and that was the Marshawn Lynch beast mode game, and they beat them. So if you can win the NFC West, get into the playoffs, host a playoff game, you have a shot at maybe advancing out of that game. But I don't think they're a contender.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a contender
Right.
at all.
As you can see here, the Rams got the Saints coming up. Then you got Buffalo. Then you got 49ers, the Jets. So you're at the Saints. You're home versus Buffalo. You go back to the 49ers. The Jets, you at the Jets versus the Cardinals here at LA and versus the Seattle. Michael.
Yeah, and those 3 of those games are division opponents that if you beat them, you own the tiebreakers, you hold your own fate in your hand in a division that nobody's running away with. The Niners are last in the division right now. When everyone thought they would run away with it this year, but they got so many injuries. So you're still in the hunt. And here's the thing, and I know people are going to say I'm crazy by saying this. I think the Rams could beat the Lions. And I know people say that that's crazy. I know people are laughing. Look, they were arguably a non-pass interference, non-defensive holding call from beating him in the first round of the playoffs last year on that Puka Nacua. And they had the lead against Detroit this year in the very first game of the season. I thought they blew that game. I thought they choked that game off. I thought easily that was a game that the Rams should have won. Matthew Stafford threw an interception in the end zone in that game. And the reason is because nobody knows Jared Goff better than Sean McVay, who was his head coach for the majority of his career. They went to a Super Bowl together. He ultimately decided Jared Goff is not going to get me a Super Bowl championship. So they unloaded him to bring in Matthew Stafford, who got them over that hump. And they finally won the Super Bowl with him at the helm. So
Crazy right now.
McVay has a way of being able to scheme really well for Jared Goff. So do I think there's any team that could probably beat the Lions right now in the playoffs? No, but Sean McVay has a chance of doing it if the Rams were to finally to win the West and get in. But the last thing I'll say is I don't think the Rams are going to get in, and if they did get in, I don't think they got a chance of doing much.
Yeah, Steve, and then Leader.
Do you see the Rams as a wild card team? And why did the Rams just absolutely pathetic in the fourth quarter? Yes, I know that they got a touchdown or kicked a field goal, but they were just absolutely awful against the Eagles. So can you explain that?
Yeah. So the first part of your question, are they a wild card team? Absolutely not. Simply because the wild card teams right now are Minnesota, Green Bay, and Washington. I suppose they have an outside shot at the Commanders, who are 7-5 right now, but at 5-6, no, I don't think you're going to be a wild card team. To me, the only way the Rams get in is if they win the West. It is their only shot at making the playoffs is to win the NFC West. And I think they could do it. Do I think they will do it? No, but I think they could, just because I don't think there's any team in the NFC West that's running away with it. There's a lot of parity. You guys, I mean, look, you guys laugh at the shot that they would have a shot against the Lions in the playoffs, but this team can beat the 49ers. They can beat the Seahawks. The Seahawks can go out and beat the 49ers. The Seahawks can beat good teams. It's more of a matchup and how well you know your opponent and how well you know their weaknesses than just simply win-loss record in these situations. So to answer your first part, no, I don't think the Rams are a wild card team if they don't win the West. I think their only shot is to win the West, host a playoff game, and then you'd see. And then you'd see. And yeah, to your point, they got a good future. They've been drafting extremely well each and every year with some of their picks. Jared Verse is running away with the NFL Defensive Player of the Year for the rookies this year. He was a great draft pick. So you just keep stacking those if you're the Rams each and every year. And at some point, you're going to have to make a decision on Stafford if this is the guy you want to continue to lead him or if you want to move him and draft the next franchise quarterback of the future. Why was the Rams so atrocious in the fourth quarter? I don't think they necessarily – sorry, I'm hearing feedback.
Yeah, no, I got you. Go ahead.
I don't necessarily think I don't think they were necessarily awful. They missed a field goal that could have kept the game close in the fourth. I thought they were awful on third down. And to your point, Steve, that's a credit to the Eagles defense. On third downs, they were able to put pressure on Matthew Stafford. They were able to sack him on third down. They were able to get them off the field. They were able to put them in third and long decisions early in those downs, first and second down. That's what the Eagles thrived at. So suddenly the Rams, when you're trying to get, short yardage on like third down, you're looking at 3rd and 9, and that's when the Eagles were able to pin their ears back, blitz the quarterback, get to the quarterback, sack him, put pressure on him. And that's why defensively the Eagles were able to do well in that fourth quarter and the Rams struggled. Offensively for the Eagles, all you needed to do was hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley, and by the time that fourth quarter rolled around, that Rams young defense was shot. And he was able to burst the line 70, 72 yards. Gainwell, obviously, like we just said. So that tends to happen. I just watched it last night with the Ravens and what they were able to do against the Chargers. Early on, you might be able to stop those guys, but the cream always rises to the top, as they say. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. These guys are the cream. They are the best in the business at what they do. And it wears down defenses and defensive lines the longer the game goes. And so when you're gassed by the fourth quarter, when you've been on the field a lot, that's when you're going to see those big breakthrough runs that happened and occurred. So, in a vacuum, you could say they were absolutely awful, but you could say everything the Eagles were doing early in that game and what they were able to do led to what happened late and those big runs that were able to make it a blowout in what was a close game for most of the game.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex, and then we'll go right back to leader.
My last question is, what are your thoughts on the rest of the NFC East, and do you think that the Eagles are the biggest threat in the NFC?
So you and I, Alex, we talked about this during the game. Alex is my guy, for the record, guys. That's my guy. Even though he likes to fall asleep when we're supposed to record a podcast, I don't hold that against you. Alex is still my guy. But we were DMing each other back and forth during that Rams-Eagles game. And what I was joking with him was, and it's true, Eagles didn't need that victory as badly as the Rams did when it came to making the playoffs. At the time, now the Eagles are 3 ahead of the Commanders in the loss column. The NFC East outside of the Eagles, and maybe the Commanders, if you want to say that, is shot. The Cowboys are trash. The Giants... There was more talk in the press box than on Sunday Night Football when Saquon Barkley ran ramshot for 255 yards about the Giants than about Barkley and the Eagles. There was more talk in that press box and on the field and in the commentator's booth about how stupid and idiotic the New York Giants have run their organization to let a guy like Saquon Barkley go, to give Daniel Jones 4 years, $160 million, only to cut.
I have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia. I'll tell you that.
My bad, Michael.
No, that's perfect. I loved it. I'll shut up for that clip. You just nailed it. That is one of the worst run organizations now. The New York Jets and the New York Giants are just trash at running those two football teams. And that was more of the conversation when Saquon Barkley ran for 255. Obviously, it should be about him and the Eagles, but it was more about the Giants, especially with the Daniel Jones news preceding it, than it was about that. But the point was the Rams needed that win to jump into a three-way tie for first place in the NFC West, to put them in a position of power where they owned the tiebreaker over the Seahawks and they controlled their destiny over the Cardinals. Obviously, they lose, so now they need to beat the Saints. They need some help. They need Seattle and Arizona to lose, and they need to beat them when they play them later in the season. But Philly could have been 8-3 right now and still been 2 games ahead of the Commanders, with the Commanders coming up on their schedule. So, yes, the answer to your question, Alex, is Philly is the class of the NFC East. No team's going to come at them. The Commanders are not as good as we think they are. The improvements they made have been good. Similar to the Rams, they're young. They're on the right trajectory. Keep stacking dominoes, and maybe in a few years you get there. So it's the Eagles are going to run away with the East. And I think your next question was, are they the best team in the NFC? Right now, Detroit is the best team in the NFC. Minnesota might be second. Eagles might be second. This is an argument we could have. But until I see Philly play Baltimore, play Pittsburgh, play Washington again, I can't definitively tell you if they're better than the Lions right now. I can't. So let me see those games. If the Eagles come out of it 3-0 against those 3 teams, hell yeah, I'll say I think the Eagles are in the driver's seat to go to the Super Bowl and maybe the best
or
team.
3-1, or how about 2-1?
I mean, if you lose a game close, something crazy happens against Baltimore, for example. I mean, I don't think you can lose to the Commanders and me to tell you that you're better than the Lions if that's the case. Right. But yeah, if they lost a crazy close game to Pittsburgh, but Baltimore is that game I really want to look at. After watching Baltimore last night, those games kind of mirrored each other, right? Close games early, 2 of the top running backs in the league, dual threat quarterbacks, pretty good defense, especially on the defensive front. I actually like the Eagles' defensive front better than Baltimore's, by the way. But I want to see those 2 teams go toe-to-toe. Thankfully, we don't have to wait too long for that to happen, obviously. But that's what I want to see. And if Baltimore were to win that game, like in overtime or something, then yeah, and the Eagles are 3-1 after that, then yeah, sure, I could say they're still up there. But that's the game I want to see as a measuring stick game to see where the Eagles are at.
Yep.
Just a quick, hold on for a second. Just a quick question. Do you see the Rams beating the Commanders at all?
You say you see them beating the Lions, so.
Do I see the Rams beating the Commanders? Is that your question?
Yes.
They're going to the Lions.
They don't play the Commanders. You mean if they
don't play the
playoffs?
Yeah, the Lions. Sorry about that. My date's confused.
Yeah, what he was saying is, I got you, Steve. He was saying, if you see the Rams beating the Lions, what's your thoughts on that matchup if it ever happens? And then we'll go to leader before we let you go.
I say it because it is a team they know well, and it is a team Sean McVay knows Jared Goff. So when you literally know your opponent, and especially the man leading the team, and you know them that closely, then yes, you have a very good chance. And every time we've seen these 2 teams play in the last 12 months, in the NFC wildcard game last year, and again, that was a game that the Rams led multiple times in that game. They were coming down the field to win the game. The Lions defense couldn't stop the Rams. They got into a 3rd and long. Puka Nacua got held. There should have been a pass interference call. Watch it yourself. There could have been 3 fouls on that one play. And instead, the Lions get the ball. They're able to get the first down, milk the clock, and win it. But if a referee throws the flag there, the Rams go down and win that game in the playoffs and upset and knock off the Lions. Now go back to week 1, opening night. Rams at the Lions, right? 10-3 at the half. Lions look like the better team. Rams come back, tie it, and actually had a lead and choke that game off and threw a pick 6 in the end zone. And they lose in overtime, and they never even get the ball. So if you're telling me just watching those 2 games on film, watch them with your own eyes.
Both of them?
And they didn't even have Puka Nacua at all in that opening game. He was out in the first quarter. If you're telling me you don't think the Rams would have a shot at the Lions, records aside, just
This
watching
year?
them play head to head in the last 12 months, then I would say you're crazy. Now, what I mean by that is not that the Rams are overall better than the Lions, not that the Rams are going to go on and win the Super Bowl if they can beat the Lions, but that if, let's say, they were to meet in the second round of the playoffs in the NFC, after the Lions have the bye and the Rams go up to Detroit, I could see them pulling off that upset, knocking the Lions out, and then that gives a better path for a team like the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl or even Minnesota or something in that case, because you had a team that knew their opponent well, knew their opponent's quarterback's weaknesses extremely well, and then's able to go up there and pull off an upset. They arguably could have already done it twice in the last 2 years. Third time could be a charm.
Yep. And finally, let's go ahead to you, leader.
You're muted, leader.
Whoops. Go ahead.
So,
My bad.
Yes, man. The number one thing, we talking about beating the Rams. I just want to just break down a couple of things. Beating the Rams, the Rams beating the Lions. We're talking about this year.
Yep.
We're not talking about those last 2 years, and the outcome was losses. It's real hard to let that be your blueprint. I'm just saying, just on, like, for one, I honor who you are. I like how you debate. That's good. Keep doing that, man. We need more people out here.
Wait. Let me ask you a question. Well, you keep saying 2 years. What are you talking 2 years? They played first game of this season a few months ago. They were winning the game in the fourth quarter. They threw a pick six in the end zone, or not pick six, but they threw a pick in the end zone, and they lost in overtime without getting the ball.
Hold up, my
that
man.
was
They
this
lost.
year without Puka Nacua.
Right.
They lost.
Yeah, and then the other game was like 10 months ago in the playoffs.
Yeah,
So that's not 2 years ago, bro. That's this year.
It was what Michael was saying is the first matchup was in the 2023 playoff in the I think it was a
January
wild card game.
January.
10 months ago. And the second game, right? And the second game was
week
fandom.
one.
Don't be. It's cool. Just don't be emotional in fandom. Like, you gotta be.
No. I'm not being emotional, man. You're saying 2 years ago. I'm saying it happened in the last 10 months.
You gotta listen. You gotta listen. Now, all that 10-month stuff, all that, they lost. My mistake. They lost. That's what I was saying.
They also beat the shit out of Minnesota this year.
And Minnesota out of 10. What about Minnesota? How are you comparing them to the Lions?
What are you talking about? Minnesota's got 2 losses.
How are you comparing them to the Lions?
And they were in it with the Lions. So
How
you're telling me
how are you comparing them to the Lions?
Because they're in the same division. The Lions almost lost to the Vikings, and the Rams beat the brakes off the Vikings.
The Lions are a different monster.
Okay.
Just because they got close?
I don't know, man. Sports are about matchups and any single thing you do. So some matchups favor a certain team based on the personnel, based on how they know their opponent inside and out, the plays they're going to run.
They're all losses.
You're right about that. Until you beat them, you can't say they will. But if you watch those games on tape, rewatch both of those games from the last 10 months, and you tell me you don't think the Rams would have a chance against the Lions. Just watch them.
You know, so I asked you for some sheets, and you brought me.
What's going on?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway,
let's keep moving.
Yeah, I know. My bad.
Here's the thing and what I mean by that, right? It's all matchup based. The Rams play the Seattle Seahawks very well. They play the San Francisco 49ers very well. They own the Arizona Cardinals outside of this game earlier where they got the brakes beat off them. But for those points, those are 3 teams they play well, they know well, they beat well. They're all division opponents. They play the Lions very well. Why? Because Jared Goff was their franchise quarterback. They traded 4 first-round picks to draft him. They went to a Super Bowl with him, and they lost. And why did they lose? Because the Patriots defense shut down Jared Goff. They knew his weaknesses. They put him in positions where he was to fail, not succeed. Sean McVay knows that better than everybody. So every time the Rams and Lions meet, it is a close game. It is a game that goes back and forth. It is a game that comes down to inches one play here, one non-penalty here. That's just the way it is. If the Rams were to play the Eagles would beat the brakes off of them. They don't play very well versus Green Bay, who's always kind of beat them in the playoffs. This is just the reality of the situation when it comes to matchups. I don't think the Rams could beat the 4 best teams in the AFC, and I'm talking about Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo, and I'll even say the Texans or the Ravens, like we said. So I don't think the Rams could beat any of those teams. But when it comes to those NFC West teams, when it comes to the Lions, when it comes to even Minnesota, as you saw earlier this year, those are teams that they match up well with. It all comes down to matchups. And those are matchups that favor them. But when you play a team with a really good dual threat quarterback, like all those teams I just named have, Jared Goff is not one, by the way. He is not a good dual threat quarterback, and the Rams defense struggles with running and scrambling and dual threat quarterbacks. They struggle. So those are the points I was trying to make.
Right.
Just one. I'm sorry about that. Just one more question. So you were so on Sunday. Okay. This has got me so pissed. So when Nick Sirianni threw that challenge flag, it really seems that these referees on Sunday night didn't want to do any of these calls against the Eagles or the Rams. What do you feel about that?
I don't know which challenge flag you're thinking. Was it the touchdown?
No, it was the fumble.
Oh, right. The early fumble, right? The Kyron
Yes.
fumble.
Yeah, I think he was talking about the fumble.
Yeah, obviously that was a great one. I was sitting there, watching the tape. It 100% was a fumble, and it should have been Eagles' ball, but I was wondering how you could challenge what the ref's call on the field was, which was like forward progress had been stopped, I think. Like, I didn't know how that could be challenged, but there's nobody who could watch that play and say that wasn't a fumble. And they got that one right, obviously. And that one, again, you talk about, okay, the Rams were so bad, but if the Rams go down and score a touchdown on the opening drive, instead of fumbling and giving up a touchdown, could have been a lot different game than the final score showed. At the end of the day, do I think it would have been different? No, because they were gassed by the time Saquon Barkley was gashing him for 70 and 72 yards. The defense was making mistakes left and right, and the Eagles' defensive front was better. But I'm just saying the game looks a lot different if that fumble doesn't happen and the Rams go in and punch it in on their opening drive, and you never know how it plays out. That's just sports. I also saw a lot of Eagle fans were pissed off, including Alex here, about that PI they called, I think on Puka Nacua late in the game. And a lot of fans thought the referees were gifting the Rams some point and trying to keep it close late in the game. Look, some of those calls were questionable. I was there at the Super Bowl live when the Eagles lost to the Chiefs, and obviously there was that big defensive holding penalty on Juju Smith-Schuster on that final drive for the Chiefs. That was huge in them ultimately losing that game. And watching it live, his hands were on him. He held him. Did I think it was PI? And maybe I have a different viewpoint on what pass interference is in the NFL to defensive holding. You can call both, but I feel like referees nowadays call pass interference way too prevalently than they do defensive holding calls, because you put your arms around a guy, hold his jersey a little bit. Maybe it slows down his route so he can't get to the ball or get past you in a way. And you call pass interference, which puts the ball on the spot of the foul, which in some cases on deep passes can be a 20, 30-yard penalty, as it was in that Eagles-Rams game in the second half when they got the PI and they were able to get the ball down there and ultimately score a touchdown. But to me, I'd rather see defensive holding be called on those plays if you're not interfering with the receiver physically before the ball gets there. I think there's a stark difference between defensive holding when you're actually holding his jersey or putting his hands on him to stop him from being able to run the route he makes and therefore his timing on the catch, and actually interfering with his ability to catch the ball when the ball is about to be there. That should be a difference. The defensive holding would be a 10-yard penalty compared to a pass interference was a spot foul. And ultimately, games can be changed on the course of that call alone, because a pass interference could put the ball on the 1-yard line, or in the case of the Rams, I think it was on the 3-yard line. Whereas a holding would have just been a 10-yard penalty to first down, and then the Rams would still have to have moved the ball and still get in the end zone and go 30, 40 yards. So, look, I don't think the refs made anything egregious or atrocious. When you challenge, it ended up being the right calls for the most part. But I would just like to say overall, and this is across the NFL, not just in that game, I would like to see defensive holding and a 10-yard penalty be called more than pass interference when it's clear that the cornerback or the safety is holding and not a blatant pass interference call.
Alex, you got anything to add?
Nothing really. I think we covered a lot.
All right. Well, it's on you, Michael. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Michael?
Not really.
Yeah.
Go follow for Eagles fans out there. I'm happy for you guys. I'm happy
I got one last.
Go ahead, Alex. And then we'll.
Sorry to interrupt you.
And then I'll go my monologue, my post podcast monologue. Go ahead, Alex.
Yep.
My bad for interrupting you.
No, you're good, Alex. Go ahead.
Okay. What is your score prediction for the Ravens Eagle game?
Oh man, you put me on the spot. Put me on the spot like I'm a cheetah. Shoot.
And also I'll add to that your game versus the New Orleans Saints. So both your game and our game. So
all right, well, let me start with the Rams because that's my job. I got to do that. I've already looked at that matchup and seen. It's hard for me to predict right now because we just had a Zoom conference with Sean McVay today, and we don't know the status of Demarcus Robinson, which maybe you guys think the third wide receiver on a team isn't that important, but he is important for this Rams, especially with some of the cornerbacks the Saints have that could negate Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. Demarcus Robinson suddenly becomes very important. He's had touchdowns in back-to-back games. So yeah, I think the Rams, if Demarcus Robinson is able to play, obviously, again, it's this DUI that he got Monday morning, that is hanging over the heads like a dark cloud to see if there's any legal repercussions or suspensions coming down by the league for a personal conduct policy. The reports for you guys, if you haven't heard it, 5 a.m, coming back from the loss against the Eagles, likely from partying somewhere in LA. He was driving 100 miles per hour on the 101 freeway heading back to the Rams training camp. And he got pulled over and was arrested for a DUI. So if he can't go, it changes this game a little bit, but I still think the Rams win that game 27-24, something along that lines, and kind of get back on track, get back to 500 against the Saints. The big game, this is the best game, and I don't know why it's not flexed to Sunday night, and it's just a day game, but that Baltimore Eagles game to me is the best game of the week. It's the game I want to see. Look, if this game was in Philly, I might take the Eagles. I think this is two high potent offenses, the two best running backs in the league, arguably the two best dual threat quarterbacks in the league, though I think Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have something to say about that as well. So does CJ Stroud to an extent. But I like Baltimore in a close one. I like this game coming down to a last-minute field goal, and maybe Justin Tucker redeems himself. I'm not sure. He's been trashed this year. But if he can redeem himself, I like Baltimore in a close one. And to the point as what you guys said earlier, even if they lose that game close, just like that tells me the Eagles are still contenders because I had Baltimore in the Super Bowl this year, and I still am sticking to that. So that tells me they're still contenders. Now, if Baltimore blows them out, then we're having a different conversation. But I don't think that happens.
Right. So with that being said, let's give our final thoughts before we wrap up. We thank Michael. We appreciate you for joining us. So, Alex, any final thoughts?
Let's have a great rest of the week, and hopefully everyone stays healthy.
Yep. Steve?
Yeah, have a wonderful week. Have a very safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I'm glad you go ahead, Steve.
And let's go Eagles.
Yeah.
And fly Eagles fly.
He said it. I heard fly Eagles fly for Michael.
I did too. I did.
I
was trying to
play the song.
He said it correctly. I was trying to correct him so he'd say it correctly.
Way to go, Michael. Hey,
I will say something in my final thoughts here. My post podcast or end of the podcast monologue here. I know you guys are notorious Eagles fans for having a jail inside that stadium. And one thing I can say is as I was leaving the press box heading to the Rams locker room to go down to the field after the Eagles blew out the Rams 37-20, there was 2 Eagle fans in handcuffs that I walked past. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, because there's no jail at SoFi Stadium to put them in. So they're literally sitting there in the back little areas where, like, you know, staff is eating and golf carts are taking players back and forth. So I'm just wondering what those Eagles fans did in that stadium that night to get arrested and be sitting there in handcuffs.
Probably fighting as usual.
Probably
because
fighting Rams fans.
It seems that a lot of these Eagles fans want to fight the other fans now. It's like, seriously? You're supposed to be representing your team, not going out and fighting the other team fans. Like, come on.
I agree. Want to see him be a little more classy, but hey, Raiders fans do the same thing wherever they go as well. They fight everyone too. It's just a thing. I don't know. It's just a mentality. But to Steve's point, nobody had mentioned it until just then. Man, Thanksgiving is coming up. We're a couple days away. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving, safe Thanksgiving, no fights with their family. To Steve's point with Eagles fans, don't fight your own family. That's never a good look. Enjoy them. Try not to talk politics or anything that could be divisive, and watch some freaking great football. Netflix is getting, some games here coming up. So just have a good time and enjoy football and enjoy sports, because that's what Thanksgiving to me gets to all be about. And so do that, have fun, and let's get ready for, look, Rams Saints I got to watch for work, but I'm going to be more watching that Eagles Ravens game to see, who's going to win that. To me, that's the game of the week.
I'll make sure I follow you on Twitter.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
And for me, y'all know what to do, y'all. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, like, subscribe, comment. Birds of Broad Street YouTube channel, all of our channels. Me, Alex, Leader, Steve, Simone, One Trey Rock, and Smitty. Here I come. With that being said, fly, Eagles, fly, go Birds, and come get your Blitz take. Here I come. Fly,